Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Brzezowski, and I sit on the Education Committee for CITE. I'm here with Jen Glynn to talk about the CITP, kind of how it was created, why it was created, and help give you a little more insight about why you should consider it. So, Jen, thank you for being here.
I'm so glad. I'm looking forward to having more CITPs accredited.
Wonderful. So the Certified Incentive Travel Professional is really the mid-level certification that we offer through CITE, and it's for incentive travel professionals with at least 5 years of full-time experience. And it is part of our suite of certifications, which include the CIS and the CITE. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that collection?
Sure, absolutely. You know, we look at, we did a job analysis a few years ago now and looked at what kind of skill sets that we could be there to help our members become an educated incentive travel professional. So continue to grow their career through CITE. And obviously we've done a good job at that with educational offerings at our global conferences and our summits, but we also wanted something that could be used for distance learning. So we'll have the Knowledge Center on there, and all of those flowed into a component of where you would be at your career. So the CIS, the Certified Incentive Specialist, that is your entry level. What is incentive travel? How do you measure incentive travel? What does incentive travel delivery look like? But then, you know, we were missing, and the whole reason we developed the CITP is we had a gap between our entry level incentive travel professional and our executive senior level, 25 plus years in the industry kind of certification. So years ago, I was tasked as VP of Education to look at the rollout or the redevelopment of the Certified Incentive Travel executive role. And in all of our focus groups and interviews and stuff that we did, we came up to the conclusion that they're actually right now the need in the marketplace is for that mid-tier person that a company wants to invest in to continue their journey in the incentive travel industry. So,
great. And so a CITP, does that indicate any particular segment of the industry? Is it open to buyers, suppliers, any sort of segment of who we work with?
No, I mean, it's open for anybody. My correlation is the certified meeting professionals, because so many of us know what a CMP is. So there's a lot of hoteliers and DMCs out there, hotel cruise lines, et cetera, that have their CMP. And although they're not actually a day-to-day meeting planner, they're serving their customers better by understanding the framework of where their customer is coming from. So that's the same thing when we threw spaghetti on the wall back in Washington, D.C. many years ago with a global group of people that we brought volunteers from different segments and different geographical areas of our members. We determined that this has to be written from a North Star point of view. And our North Star, like the CMP, is an event planner. But again, it's open to hoteliers, airlines, DMCs. It just makes you understand your client perspective better.
Sure, absolutely. And so it is written from the perspective of one type of individual in our industry. And that, again, as I've heard you say many times, we're a small but mighty association. And so to encompass everybody that we work with, you really need to have that one perspective. So if someone's sitting to take the exam, what perspective should they be thinking about as they answer those questions?
Well, if you're a supplier in the market, and that could be a supplier buyer if you're a DMC, right? But if you need to look at it as a third party agency perspective. And also, because we're a global association, we had to pick where the largest buying group was and put it into that perspective. So it wasn't to discredit an agency buyer in the UK or India or South Africa, but we needed, when you're writing an exam versus, we even had talked about during the exam writing essays and submitting long form, which could have been a little bit more, allowed for a little bit more inclusiveness in that way, but it also would have really, again, been subjective to the person that was assessing that long form answer, right? So how do you make it work so that we could be accredited and that's a big thing, right? We started this from the get-go, where CMP is a certification. They ended up working backwards years later when they wanted to be accredited. So we went in right from the get-go of, let's go for accreditation. It adds credibility to the certification. So when Merits and 110 or Accor are hiring people and they see that it's a CITP, they know it wasn't an easy win for that individual. So that's why we picked the North Star of the North American agency, third party going outbound. So going into India, going into Canada, into the Great Britain, so that you have a focal point. I think that's where people quite often stumble on CITP, is they're looking at it purely from their perspective, and what they would do within their own businesses. But this is a accreditation certification that needs to be global in scope. So, and I find also when I'm doing some of the study groups or talking to people, I'm like, drop your ego and go in, like you're new to the industry, and see what you can learn, right? The overview modules are really created to be an overview. These are subjects that we did through our job analysis, through our assessment, through our focus groups. We determined these are the buckets that need person in the manager director level should know. They may not be working day to day on incentive program design or budget or things to do with sustainability, but they need to, as a leader, have an understanding, a high level understanding of these items.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's where our chapter study groups come in as helpful resources when you're preparing to take the exam. And we're working with the chapters as well to help create that, but bringing in outside speakers or talking to somebody that does that as their full-time day-to-day job, so you can understand what they take into consideration and how that would apply to the exam.
Well, and one of the big things that our larger agency partners that we talked to when we were designing this, we talked to people all across the globe in our focus groups, hundreds of people, but they're like, I don't want, and this is no discredit to a CMP because it's a very hard certification to get as well. I don't want my team to have to read a couple of textbooks and memorize the way it's done in a textbook in order to prove that they know the knowledge. They really wanted it to be evident that the person had been in the industry for a period of time, had either had been involved in some component of incentive travel program. So we really made sure that the overview modules, they're not there to don't memorize them, work with them, talk amongst your group about the topic of incentive program design or metrics, et cetera, or budget management with someone like you just said, and then go in and read the questions clearly is my biggest advice, because people tend to think, especially for those of us that have been in the business for 30 years, we probably skim through and go, oh yeah, I know that. But the question clearly sometimes says, what is the best scenario? They may all be good scenarios, but what is the best scenario? So, and for all of the people that are formers, that are already certified in CITP, we actually refresh those questions on how well they work. And if everybody got the question wrong, we'll take that question out, right? And we'll rework it. So we do CITP exam question building. Again, with a global, we have people from India, South Africa, Singapore, Great Britain, Ireland. I'm trying to picture the rooms that I've sat in with people that are reworking these questions, and they're all site members and they're all site volunteers. Because I think sometimes that people think that we just went to protesting who we work with to make sure we're on the straight and narrow.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that's an important thing to note with the questions, and that if it is poorly answered by a large number of people, it is removed, and that's taken into consideration. And that's also why sample questions aren't shared, because it diminishes the pool that we have to work from. And if those questions change over time, we don't want outdated information out there being shared, because that doesn't really benefit anyone taking the exam.
Well, and you have a perfect segue there to the exam itself, in that there's many combinations of exams, right? We have a bank of questions. So no one exam is going to be exactly the same. It'll be exactly the same for that time period, but the next time you write it, the same 100 questions are not going to be on there. They're going to be pulled from that bank of questions. And those questions, just so people understand, is not Jen, Glenn, and Colleen checking off that you got 80%, or et cetera, et cetera. It's actually sent back in order to provide our accreditation status back to protesting. They mark the exams. And it's another reason why we can't say question 73, you got it wrong, and question 78. We have continually learned how to make CITP better. And one of the things we did is now, if you don't pass the exam on your first go round, we give you a bucket of area of where you should focus the next time. So that could be on the business reason of incentive travel. So that's just like your LSATs, your GMATs, your every other exam out there. You don't get a copy of the exam, and you don't get a copy of what question specifically you got wrong.
Exactly. And it is designed to be a challenging exam because it does mean something. We don't want it to be that any individual who maybe started 2 days ago in the industry could go out and get this. You do have to meet certain qualifications in order to apply for the exam. That is all verified before you're approved to sit for the exam. So again, mid-level, and that is again to put some weight behind those letters when you see them behind your name.
No, that's exactly it.
Yeah. So what do you think, what have you heard in talking to people is a benefit of having a CITP? Why should someone consider sitting for this?
I think it goes to your own investment in yourself and your professional development. So no matter if you're taking a DMCP at ADME or meeting professionals international CMP, et cetera, I just think it looks like it speaks volumes of how much you're investing in our industry. So when you're applying for a job, or even when you have that conversation with your customers, quite often I'll get asked what's CITP, because it's not as well known as an MBA, right? So, and it's very niche marketed. So I think it just opens the doors to having that conversation. And if you're a supplier, it really shows to your third-party agencies that you understand where they're coming from. And it actually allows you to have better strategic conversations with your partners in order to be a true partner.
Sure, absolutely. So it is a bit of an exclusive club. Much like membership in CITE, it does open doors. And I think it's one more way that you build a relationship, that you show your credibility, that there's some sort of mark behind what your knowledge is. And again, that's why it's all about knowledge and how you apply it, and not memorization and knowing what a definition is. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. The more CITP that we have out there, the more credibility we'll have for our industry. And gone are the days of champagne and bubbles and caviar. And now we're really focused. And, even during the pandemic, we're having a lot of conversations with our clients about how they're measuring their incentive travel programs, what additional incentive travel programs they can have added, or, Bob always had his trip to Hawaii every other year. So now what is actually the result and the business results? So I just think overall, it's going to make you a stronger incentive travel professional.
Absolutely. I would agree. And I think, also as we come out of the pandemic and people are looking to rehire and rebuild teams, it definitely shows some investment in yourself and your longevity with the industry and what you want to do. So that speaks highly there as well. Again, I think from both of our perspectives, as we worked through CITP week last year and sit on the education committee, we have been working to better explain what the exam is all about. There is a document on the website called Interested in Obtaining Your CITP. And we want everyone to read that before they decide to sit for the exam. It talks through all the details of what those requirements are of what you need to sit for the exam, what to expect, and we'll have other videos in this series that go into that as well. But in closing, are there any other general thoughts that you have for someone that might be considering if this is a path that they should look at?
No, I would just say go for it. I mean, the site board of directors and the foundation are investing in making this an affordable opportunity during this time, as well as giving back to our chapters, and our chapters have really stepped up and given you the opportunity. So don't wait. It's definitely worth pursuing.
Absolutely. Well, great. Well, we'll look forward to talking again in future videos, but thank you again for your time, and we look forward to seeing many more CITPs.